Alright, hi everybody. I'm Ned and I make games. Today we're going to be starting a new game. It's actually one of my first times to stream, so please be sure to let me know if the volume levels are off or anything. So, my plan for this channel is basically to just make games that I've been wanting to. This kind of gives me an excuse to be able to make smaller games that I haven't really been able to find time for before, and plus it's more fun to make them with other people, so hopefully this will go well. My plan right now is to make like an online game, and I wanted to have modding support. So those are kind of my main two goals. And we're first off going to start with just kind of like a prototype game, which I'm just calling the very exciting name of Moddable Chess. That it will have 2-player online multiplayer, as well as let you be able to like create custom chess pieces through modding. And then from there on we'll move. Well, my main idea I want to make is basically think like a mixture between Final Fantasy Tactics and Pokemon, where you can mod your own version of Pokemon and maps. I thought that'd be kind of cool, and I've always wanted to make a game like that. So, alright, well, let's get started. As you see here, I'm going to be using Unity. It's pretty good because you can, of course, export it to all kinds of different platforms. And it also has built-in networking and a pretty good modding support. So I also use Microsoft Visual Studio. I'm not a big fan of mono develop. It's always been kind of buggy for me. And since Unity added built-in support for Visual Studio, it's really easy to get set up running. I think you just have to choose to use it when you install Unity, so it's always nice. Okay, so this is basically just an empty project. I have a little kind of game engine that I use called Beluga, and it's pretty simple. I like to keep like the game logic separate from the Unity engine as much as I can, just because it helps kind of prevent bugs by making you not rely so much on the low level functions of Unity, so that like if they change it, it's easy to keep up to date. Also, it helps you keep good programming habits, so by helping you to keep your code decoupled, which means basically the code doesn't depend on too many other pieces at once. So we'll go ahead and make a new script. It'll be the Moddable Chess game, which is kind of like the main, well, I guess it'd be like the main class for the game if you were making it in some other, like Java or whatever. And it's based on my game class in Beluga, which you can see here. It's not really that complicated. This component registry is kind of, you can register different event listers here, and then the scene is basically just like scenes in Unity where you, like, there's different like menus that you can set up controllers there. And then this list is, I call it tickings, but it's basically for any object that needs to be updated every frame. And then the tick count. And then these are messages for when a new scene is entered and exited. That's basically everything that the game does. The game class does. And then make another folder. This time it's for the engine's scripts. And this will basically link Unity to my game logic scripts. We're going to use something called the singleton pattern, which tries to ensure that there's always only one instance of the GameLink class in the game at all times. That way you can just call the any static functions and you don't have to try to keep track of it yourself. We'll use this Boolean value to keep track if we know of the singleton object yet, or if we need to create it. And then this this value here will actually keep the object in memory. I actually have this helper function here in my Beluga code that helps you do singleton things like this, because I tend to like this pattern a lot. And you can see here that it just creates an object if it's not made already, and then adds the component if it's not there. It'll be more obvious in a sec. Oh yeah. It needs to be not loaded, of course. And then the actual the instance will have the instance of the moddable chess game. And then we'll have this awake function, which is called for all Unity games, or all Unity objects when they first are created. it's actually called, like, you might have, if you ever worked with Unity, they also have a start function. The difference is that awake is called right after the object is created, while start is called before it's first updated. So, like, awake is called during this function, where if I did this logic in start, it would be called like after this function returns and whenever Unity gets back to updating it. So obviously we don't want to do it in start right now, because then this game would be null, which would be a problem. I'll go ahead and have it load the first scene. Now I'll use this dummy class just to test things. And then if I call GameLink, oh, did I make it private? No. Oh, I forgot to make it static. Now it's going to complain about just calling a statement like this, so then just to show, or just to do something with the value, I'll go ahead and log or debug the, set a debug log with the game. Now if we run play, the dummy should call, yep, and here's the singleton object with the game link, and then over here we get the debug print. So everything works as expected. Okay, I'll go, it's asking me to save the scene, so I'll just go ahead and call it test scene for now. We'll probably change it later. Okay, now before we get too much farther, it's easy to just start programming and then kind of get lost because you didn't think of all the possibilities, so it's useful to go ahead and do like some design diagrams first, especially when you're first starting. I think a lot of people, especially in game development, that have just come from taking a software engineering class, maybe put a little bit too much weight on things like design diagrams or like game design documents. If you're doing just a smaller game like this, I mean, sure, if you have a huge team, then you need things like that to help like communicate all the goals and design for everyone on the team. But if you're just one or two people, it's not as important and it takes a lot of time. But I find that some design does help a little bit, so I'm using this program called UML-let. And if you've ever heard of UML, it's basically a software design diagramming, I guess language is a good thing to call it. And it's also very complicated, so I apologize if I don't. Oh, thanks, Steph. I apologize if I don't use the diagrams completely correctly, because I'm mostly using this to help me plan out the software, and it's mostly just for personal use. But I mean, if you see something completely wrong, I would, of course, be happy to know. I'm no expert on UML, that's for sure. But I'm going to start with these packages, and it's going to kind of group my classes into three main, well, I guess groupings. Obviously, the Unity or Engine classes. It's too dark. And then the game design logic classes. And then there's one other group that I like to try and keep separate as much as possible, which is kind of like the display. Like basically all the graphics. I'd include sound in this as well. Anything that the player sees or hears. I guess you could say user experience might be a better all-encompassing tag. I'll go ahead and save it. Let's make a new planning folder for files like this. Now, technically in UML, this would be called object diagram, which is separate from a class diagram in that a class is more like, well, it diagrams actual classes, interfaces, and the inheritance of those classes. Whereas an object diagram is more about the actual instances. So for example, if you had a bunch of different objects that modeled or that were all the same class, in the class diagram there would only be one object, but here we could have multiple objects. And I think it's easier to use the object diagram, especially when you're first starting with a project, because it's just easier to conceptualize and you don't have to worry about generalizing the classes as much. Actually, let's start with the logic. So, since we're going to make a moddable chess game, I guess we can start simple and just type the things that we need for actual chess. So the obvious is a board. And then a piece. That's really all the physical objects you need for chess. So I'll also put in some logic things here. Like for the, think of the game flow for a chess game. Maybe a turn manager, so that we know like when the players have decided, and then and the turn manager will also say like what player moves when. And then we'll need I guess a piece mover is a good thing to name it. That would actually move the pieces. And we probably also need an actual game manager, because it would be able to tell if one player has won or not. And then we can think about what other pieces of data these things would need. The pieces, I think, we definitely need like a piece behavior data, which would tell it how it could move. And what other attributes piece would have, I guess, what player it belongs to. Maybe owner is a better name. And then probably the piece type. Not showing up. Oh, and position on the board. Maybe we should have, think of a flag as if the piece has been captured or not. And then the board would have obviously dimensions. And then you could probably say that the pieces are probably a attribute of the board, but since they're their own object, you'd actually use this arrow. Now the direction that you put the arrow basically be, should the piece store the board object or the other way? I would say the board should point to the pieces. And then one thing you can do with UML is here you can say how many pieces the board would have, and I guess that probably depends on the mod in our instance. How many pieces are there in an actual chess game? I don't know, that would require counting. Now you would think the piece would have to have, could only have one board, but actually it could have 0, because if it was captured it wouldn't be on the board anymore. Okay, and then the piece would have it would also have a link to the piece behavior. What attributes would this have? Obviously, move options. Maybe graphical style. I don't know, that might actually be a whole nother object, but I think we're getting ahead of ourselves, so. Oh, thank you. Yes, so chess has 16 pieces. Maybe that's just for one player though. Okay, now the turn manager, it would need to keep track of the actual turn number and probably which active player. And then it would definitely have a way to see the board, so it could. Actually, I don't know if the turn manager would care about the board, but it would definitely tell the piece mover when to do its job, and the piece mover would have a reference to the board. Now the game manager, it would definitely have a reference to the board, because in order to tell if a player has won, it would need to see the board state. And then it would also have reference to the turn manager, so it could tell it when the game is over. to stop doing turns, basically. Maybe the game manager should also... There's something that would need to know, like when we have a checkmate, some kind of logic. Not the best name, but it will do. And the game manager would need to look at that and see when there's a checkmate. And then it would tell the turn manager to stop, basically. And checkmate would need to also have... Actually, we've abstracted it enough that that with the checkmate thing, I don't think the game manager needs to see the board anymore, so... Probably go both ways. And the checkmate would have to see the board, and from there it could look at the pieces and the piece behavior. I guess we should add another thing here to see if the piece is a keying object, meaning that if it gets captured, the game's over. And then we should probably also have something called the board creator. Which would set up the initial board and make sure that there's only one keying, for example. Well, I guess that would be configurable. Getting a bit spider webby. And then of course this would need a connection to the board as well. Okay, so I think this will do for now. We could probably get just for simplicity, if I don't have any numbers, I'm just gonna say it's 1-to-1. Yeah, I think everything here we just have one reference of each. Now we'll move on to the game engine. And here it can be... What I like to do is think about what kind of input each of these objects would need from Unity. So first thing, the turn manager would need some kind of like turnover input. Should probably be spacebar or enter or something, but we don't have to get that specific for now. And then maybe then it would also need some kind of way for the player to choose what piece it's picked and where it wants to move. Maybe I don't know, we'll just say mouse position for now. Seems like the most logical. And I think that also exposes that we need another logic class, probably, I don't know, turn chooser, that the player would send its inputs to. Probably a two-way association there, because the turn manager would tell the turn chooser when to start accepting input, and then the turn chooser would say when it has something valid. And then turn chooser would also need a reference to the board so that it could see, so that it could decide what moves were valid, because obviously you don't want to move a piece off the board. And then it also need to know the piece behavior for every piece and what pieces are still alive, things like that. So actually, it's the other way around, because the turn manager depends on the turnover input. And you can see here, this is why I like to have these separate little boxes, because it makes clear exactly where you need some kind of interface class. So this would be basically an event, and Unity would set up an event for when the user presses the turnover button, and then turn manager would listen to that and then do whatever its logic would be. And that just helps, like I said before, it helps keep the game logic separate from Unity, which helps you just keep good programming practices of just not depending too much on the engine classes, and the technical term for that is decoupling. And decoupling is just good in general because it helps you, it makes things a lot easier to debug. Because if you change something in one class, it won't affect the entire program, basically. Okay, so the mouse position. Obviously, the turn chooser would need that. Oop. And I think that the piece mover probably wouldn't know the mouse position. It would just get data from turn manager, which would have come from turn chooser, which would have gotten the data from the mouse position. Now, of course, if we're going to make a multiplayer game, we won't know for sure, like we won't be able to read the network player's input directly, so we also need probably, I'll just call it network turnover message. Which would be for the player over the network. And the turn manager would need that. Now the turn chooser, probably to make things simple, the turn chooser would also just be fed the input from the network player from the network player's turn chooser. So I'll just say one problem with this is that, say if I did something like network player turn actions. The problem with this is that Unity would need to know, it would need to basically have knowledge of the internal game logic, because it would be sending those actions directly to the game logic from the network. So maybe, I think we're just talking semantics here, but I think I'll network player turn messages, so it's not the actual turn data that's being sent through Unity, it's just the network's player's turn chooser would say move, I don't know, pawn to c4, and then the turn chooser would receive that message and then it would translate that into an actual turn, instead of like Unity getting the actual turn data and giving it to the turn chooser. So it's pretty much just semantics, but it's important to think about that kind of thing. What other input would we need? I guess we need to know if the player disconnected, the network player. I'll just say network player connection. Maybe connection status. And I would say probably the game manager cares about that, because if we lose connection, it would just say game was forfeit. What else? I think that's pretty much all the input this will need. But this piece behavior needs to be able to load the data, and so does the board creator. Oh, that's messy. So we need some way to load. We can just say piece behavior data files. And then probably board creation data files. And then we just do little arrows like before. I think you can, yeah, that's better. Okay, so I'll explain like how, when we get to programming the actual code, I'll explain like how Unity will get all this stuff. It's not important right now because we're just trying to model like the connections between classes, kind of see like what we need to make. No, the user experience. It is important, but right now I'm mostly focusing on the behind the scenes logic. Basically the user experience will just read data and react to it. But I guess we can write a few things here. Board graphics obviously will depend on the board. That should be another. these data things won't actually, well, the logic, like, it would just say that hey, let me expand. Okay, there we go. We'd just have like a list of different styles here, and then this would say the one that the board currently has. Same for the pieces. I don't think it would like, it wouldn't hold the actual model for the board. For that, that'd be over here in Unity. And it'd actually be loaded in through the mod system. Okay. It's pretty long, but I haven't found a better way to represent connections from the experience to the engine, but then we'd have a similar thing for the piece graphics. And one important thing is I never want to have an arrow going from game logic to the user experience. I only want to have it going the other way. Because in general, the game experience, I mean, the game logic should just not care about what's going on in the graphical space. Then we need something for, I don't know, what do we call it? The interface. Probably turn number display. Network status. Basically, are you still connected with the host or client player? What else would we have here? We have things like, oh, I didn't want to take the arrow with me. Music. Oh. Piece. Move, sound effects. So you get the idea. And then over here we'd also have similar ways to load game sounds. Fonts. And everything here. Oh, why'd you do that? That's not a very nice color, is it? Basically everything here is in the modding system. There we go, that looks better. Now we could keep going. I mean, there's tons more things that's part of the user experience. But the important part is mostly the game logic and how it reacts to the actual engine, because that helps us know how to get started with programming. And I'm sure everybody's tired of looking at this diagram. Alright, so now we can start by making our chess game scene. Not a mono behavior. This is going to be part of the game logic, and again, the scene is just a useful data structure that basically describes, I don't know, a phase of your game. So the chess scene as opposed to, I don't know, loading scene, title scene, that kind of thing. This will inherit from the simple scene, which is part of my Beluga. And here it helps with cleanup of different objects created during the scene. Like disposable lists is for any objects that would need to be destroyed when the scene is destroyed. And the activatable list is for any objects that would need to deactivate or activate when the scene is not active anymore. Again, this will be more obvious once we get started programming things. But first, let's check. Oh, I had a few drops frames, sorry about that. No, it seems to be stable, so. Again, let me know if the music is too loud or mic is too quiet. Alright, now it's complaining because the simple scene by default only has a constructor that requires a game object, because a scene without a game doesn't make much sense. So that's why we were having that error there. And then we can go back to our moddable chess game. And just for now, we'll have it on the load first scene to set the new chess scene. In general, it'll probably set the title scene, but we're just testing right now. Okay, good. It's hard to tell about volume unless you're watching yourself. Anyway, so let's go back to the diagram. What would we start with first? You could either start from the bottom and move up. But I think it might be easier to start from the top and move down here. So I'll do the game manager first. I don't really want to just call it the game manager here though, because we already have the game object, just separate. We'll call it match manager. And again, it's not a mono behavior. There's probably an easier way to set up a template so that it would put this namespace for me, but I've never bothered to look into how to do templates. So the match, what information would it have? I'll go ahead and rename this just so it's matching. So it has a board creator and a turn manager and a checkmate checker. And then also needs to know player connection status. Now for each of these arrows, you could just have the match manager, for instance, call a function on the board creator object and say make the board. Another way to do it that decreases the evil coupling that I've been talking about is to have an event that the match manager would send to the board creator. Or actually, the good thing about events is that the match manager doesn't even care who wants to listen. It just says somebody make the board. So I think we'll do that, especially since we don't have the board creator made yet. So we're going to use, in the Beluga 3 game object, there are these things called components, and it uses this component registry, which is basically just an object that holds other objects with some index or integer key. And the reason I use this is because if the match manager had, say, like this public object to a messenger for create board, let's call it command. Well, let's just go ahead and make the board creator just to kind of illustrate this. Oops. It doesn't actually need to be public. So I didn't mean to make that. Bye-bye. Okay, just for illustration purposes, let's just say the board creator is past the match manager. But you wouldn't really want to do this either because it makes coupling, like I said. So if the board creator would want to subscribe to the create board command, it would have to go into the matchmaker and access the command, and then it would subscribe to it with a listener. But we don't really like that because, like I said, it makes coupling. It has to know about the match manager. In general, the board creator should not even care. It should just listen for when the command is given to make the board. It doesn't really care who gives it. So instead, it'll just be past the Moddable Chess game. And then it would go game components, get component, and then we'd want a messenger. And then you would put in the key. But you don't want to hard code that either. So I need to make an enumeration. What should we call it? Well, I guess simplest is this component. Component keys will do that. Now you could just use a static class and do integer constants for the keys. It's nice because you don't have to. Well, here I'll show you. Let's see. create. So if we do it with enumerations, then it has to do, like, you can't just say this because it complains that it can't convert an enumeration to an integer, which is a pain. So you have to cast it every time. So another option would be, you could make this a class, a static class. And then you could do public static constant integer and then do something like this. But the problem, oh, it doesn't like that. Oh yeah, I forgot. C# does constants different than I'm used to. The problem with this is that, say in the future, well, for one, if you make another command, you have to, these are the same, which you wouldn't want, so you'd have to set it to 1 manually. Or enumerations, just do it yourself. I mean, do it automatically. So that's why I kind of tend to favor enumerations for this, because even though it's annoying to have to cast them, it prevents bugs. So I think reliability is more important than ease of use in this instance. Oh, there we go. So now that it has the command, it needs to subscribe to it with a listener. So okay, so one way you could do this is you create a new simple listener. Oh yeah, and it needs to, okay. And the simple listener wants a callback. Yeah, okay, so the simple listener, like it says, it's very simple. All it does is hold a callback, and then when the messenger notifies all its subscribers that the command's been given, then it just calls the callback. So you need to give it, yeah, if you've never seen these anonymous functions, they're very useful. I use them all the time. That here would be the arguments. The simple listener has no arguments, so you just open and close parentheses, and then this arrow means it takes these arguments and creates this anonymous function. And it works basically just like any other function, except it doesn't have a name. So we'll just do something simple here. Now we'll come back and change this, but for now we'll just do this so that we can test it. Okay, so the match manager, so we don't need this anymore. It also needs to be past the game now. And again, I'll just do this simply. We'll need to change it soon, but oh yeah. So the key is then we'll set the new messenger. Actually, we do need a private reference to the messenger so we can actually tell it to send the command. It's a little bit important. Let's see, create. Okay, stream's going well, I think. You haven't had any more drop frames, good. Okay. And so that we can get called every frame, we need to implement the eye ticking interface, which is, if you've used Unity before, in mono behaviors, this is basically the update function. I call it tick because that's what I'm used to, and I used to use other engines and they called it tick instead of update. But it's the same thing. No, this is just to test it. We'll have it wait. How about 5 seconds? Oh, why is it not like that? Oh. Yep, needs to be a float, not integer. Okay, so all this is going to do is, if the timer is positive, it'll subtract the time from the last frame. And then if the timer has just gone negative, which means we've waited a total 5 seconds, we're going to send the create board command. And obviously it won't work this way in the main game, but we're just trying to test the commands right now. The last thing we need to do is go back to the chess scene and have it create the match manager object and the board creator actually. Okay, yeah, so this looks a little weird because normally you want to keep a reference to these objects when you create them, but for testing this will be fine because we just want them to be created so that they can set up these messages and then call each other. Oh, the last thing this needs to do is add itself to the ticking queue for the game. Otherwise it wouldn't get these calls. Okay, so now let's go to Unity. I'm pretty sure 5 seconds. Should get another debug log here. Okay. Now the only problem with separating the game code from Unity is it does make it a little more difficult to use Unity's built-in debug stuff, which is very useful, but for me it's still worth it because it's difficult to have good programming practice sometimes with Unity's default component structure in my experience. Also, it's easier to control the order of updates and everything this way. So that makes everything more predictable. Okay, well, first let's make sure that it's loaded the scene. And then the match manager. These are basically just, oh, I know the problem. In the game link class, I forgot to update the game ticking function. So obviously, the game is not going to call the tick function magically. So you need to do this. And then you send it Unity's delta time. So right now the frames will be the same as Unity's, which I don't see why that would change. But I guess if you wanted to be to follow the physics engine, you could do it differently. I don't know. Okay, so now it should work. Yeah, we can see it. Yeah, there we go. Cool. Okay, so now I'll go get rid of all those. Debug. Okay, so now we're going to clean this up a bit, because like I said, you don't want to do this, like you don't want to register it like this, because when the match manager is deleted, the component of this create board command will remain. So that's like a memory leak. I created an easy way to fix it. So instead of sending the match manager game, you'd send it basically the simple scene. And then instead of registering it like this, you would go to the scene, activatable list, and then you'd add a new component janitor, which basically does exactly like it sounds, and it cleans up the create board command when the scene is unloaded. Now we have this, and we don't need this anymore. So here I'll show you. So the component janitor, basically, when it's told to be active, it will register the component for you, which is what we used to do in the match manager. And when will it be active? It's just whenever the simple scene, when the game calls enter on the simple scene, which is right after it's set, and then it sends these messages about scene, enter and exit, things like that. Okay, so now, you know, maybe in my stream message I should say what kind of game I'm making, I just realized. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so anybody who's just tuned in, we're making a moddable chess game with online multiplayer in preparation for our moddable Fire Emblem / Pokemon / Final Fantasy Tactics game, which will also be moddable and online. Okay, so where, oh yes, on the board creator we need to do the same thing, except instead of using a component janitor, we do a register, listener janitor, yeah. And so it does the same thing except with a messenger. Okay, so scene activatable list, add a new listener janitor, and the type of listener we use is just a simple listener, so you type that there. And so the subscribable we want is this. Yeah, these can get a little messy, this call list here, but you could separate out the arguments if it helps you. But I hate having extra variables lying around. Okay, and then the second argument it needs is the actual listener, so it would be this thing. Oh, okay. So yeah, you don't actually have to put simple listener, you just do iListener, which is the interface for the listener, because actually the messenger doesn't care what kind of listener it does. It has subscribed. Okay, so maybe I will separate this out just so it's a little simpler. So first we have the iSubscribable, which is our component here, the messenger. Component. And then we'll have our and this is our listener here. And then it has this anonymous function. This is the callback. And then we add the janitor, which takes a component. And again, all the janitor does, it just makes it easy to clean up the component when the scene unloads. And actually, now that I think about it, you actually don't have to do the janitor here, because this listener also, this messenger is also deleted when the scene unloads. So Technically you don't need the listener, but it's just good practice. Okay, so now I guess let's write the actual function to create the board. Obviously we'll need a lot more data for this. And we haven't even made the board object, so I don't know if we'll write it now, but just to get rid of. You don't need to have the anonymous function there. Sometimes you still might want to, if you think the arguments will change, because the arguments have to exactly match what the simple listener expects, which here is nothing. Well, I don't think this would change. If it does, we can always add it back. The only thing I could think of is that you might want to have a function to create the board prototype that's passed to it, or create the active board. I'm not sure how we'll choose what board to create. That would probably be looking back at this thing. I guess it'd be another menu before this where the players choose what mods to load. Yeah, so maybe we should add a little thing. This technically might not be in the engine though, but it would almost for sure come from a previous scene. Let's call it match setup preferences maybe. Getting a little full over here. Okay, so the board creator would need to know the preferences. And probably also the match manager, because there you could set maybe maximum turns, checkmates. Oh, hi Mr. Cryptic. Thanks for tuning in. Need to know, yeah, if checkmates are allowed or things like that. But anyway, probably getting ahead of ourselves a bit there, because like I said, that's probably in a different scene. Trying to decide where to go from here. This is the next obvious. Well, I guess we can start making the board actually. Okay, so looking at our diagram, the board doesn't really, it's basically a data class because it only holds data. Lots of things depend on it, but it doesn't depend on anything outside of what it's given. So since it's a data class, it probably will just have a bunch of private variables that it's fed from the creator or some other object. Again, we're not sure exactly how we'll model the data for the board look, so I'll just put an integer for now. And then there'll be some kind of list of pieces. We don't have piece objects yet, so I'll just say that. And using, you can generate these, what are they called? Properties, but getters and setters for each of these values. One of my favorite things about the Microsoft, what's this called? Visual Studio. So the board creator creates the new board. Let's just have it set just in arbitrary dimensions for now. Actually, what's the size of an actual chessboard? 8 by 8, okay. And then we'll just have the graphical style set to 1. So it's not the default value of 0. And I won't set the pieces now because we don't have any piece data structure, so anything I do there would have to be changed. Now, I'm going to set this as serializable because I want to be able to see these values in Unity. In order to do that, you also have to set the serialized field. Technically, you don't have to do this if the properties are public, but it's never a good idea just to have these raw fields as public in case you have to do some data validation. Oop, got him. Oh, yes. Remember, we changed this from the game to the scene earlier, so that's what it was complaining about. Okay, so now we'll go back to the game link. Actually, we need to decide how will other objects access this board. I think the easiest way would be just to set it in the game components, kind of like we did the create board message. So we'll go back to the component keys and add another. And then the board creator would just do we need a janitor for it? I guess so, because it'd also be deleted when the scene is deleted. Or it would need to be, I mean. So again, we'll do a component janitor, and all this does is remove the board when the scene is unloaded, which would happen if we move from the to another scene, like game over scene, or go back to the title screen or something like that, because we don't need the board then. Well, actually, we might need the board data because we have to see the final arrangement of pieces, but we'll worry about that in the future. Okay, so now all objects can find the board in the components collection under the game board key. Then we'll go back to the game link, which is what connects Unity to the game object. And just for testing, we'll have it serialize the board so that we can test and see creative values. Oh, that's not how you spell board. So we actually need to know when the board's created so that we can set this, but I'm just going to be lazy and have it set at every frame. Obviously you don't want to do this because it creates, or could create a frame rate slowdown because it has to access it every frame, but I mean, they always say optimize last. And plus it's just for debugging. Oh, what am I trying to do? Okay, so now if everything works right, you should see... Oh, everything did not work right. You know what? If somehow in the board creator right here, it's saying that this component came back as null, but we should just have. It's a little hard to debug because it doesn't like tell you where you declared the component, the janitor. So I think we should just make it so that it throws an error here if the subscribable is null. And this assert function, all it does is that if this value is false, then it throws an error with this message. So it's very versatile in debugging. And another good thing about the function is that the compiler actually skips over it when you compile the final version of the game, so it doesn't actually add any overhead in the final game. Let's do the same thing in the component janitor just to be safe, because I could see both of these issues causing problems in the future. Name that better. I think I was going for collection there, but so now let's see. It's gonna throw an error because I haven't actually changed anything, but yeah, subscribable is null. Now why is that? So obviously, let's go back. Where's the scene? Okay, yeah, chess scene. Okay, so yeah, it makes the match manager first, so it should. I think I might know the problem. Where is it? Okay, no, it works right, I think. I was gonna say it might be iterating through this backwards, and so this the janitor for the listener tries to be registered first. Oh, actually the problem is that since this it's trying to get this component before it's registered, because this is being called in the constructor and the janitor hasn't registered the messenger yet. So I'm trying to think what would be the best way to solve that. Maybe it needs some way to know when this is registered so it can get the object from the component list. Oh yes, I forgot I had this right here. Okay. Actually, let's make a helper object so we don't have to do this for every object we make. Let's call it, I don't know, registry. Oop. That doesn't seem like the best name. Okay. So basically what this class is going to do is it will maybe we can just add this into the janitor. Oh no, because it doesn't have any knowledge of the registry. Okay, so what this is going to do is you'll pass it the registry and some key that you want to register to, and then it will do it as soon as the key is there, or the key is filled with something. Of course, the easier way would just be for the match manager to register this as it's created. Maybe we should just do that. What problems could happen if we did that. The only thing I can think of is that if for some reason we made this scene early before it is actually loaded, or before it's actually the active scene. So take, for example, say like some platformer. So you want to be able to pause at all times, so maybe to increase or to decrease the loading time whenever you pause, you would create the pause scene at the same time you make the active scene, but you don't set the pause scene as actually controlling the game. But we're not gonna do something like that. So I think I'm probably overcomplicating things. So how about this in the component janitor? I'll have it have an extra oh, here I already have this function. This is new and register. So what it does, it registers it, or it activates it as soon as you create the janitor. So yeah, that's probably better. It's simpler that way, and we're not gonna have complicated preloaded scenes. I also have this here, but that's not as important. Okay, so now we'll go back to the match manager, and instead of just calling new component manager, we'll call the static function component janitor new and activate. And it works the same way, except that it activates itself right after being created, so that this will be registered right then. You don't have to do this here because now we know that this component is loaded. And we don't really care if the listener is activated right away, because when we call the create board, it will be. Oh, it is still... Huh. Oh, okay. No, it's the same thing, isn't it? Well, let's just make sure it's actually calling this. Okay, yeah, I don't know. Maybe something here. Oh, I forgot I had this. Yeah, I have this Beluga debug thing, which basically is just the same as Unity debug, except it puts the frame number that the message is logged. That helps a lot usually. Okay, so now we'll be able to know what frame those things are firing. Yeah. Oh, does it not do the frame? What do I even call it? Okay, so we must be doing something else wrong. But it worked just a second ago. Fortunately, debugging is just a part of game design, or game development. It's not the most fun, but... And oftentimes I find out it's just some silly mistake that I spent hours trying to fix, so... If I don't fix this soon, we'll just move on to something else, because I know it's not the most fun. I'm trying to read the call stack over here. Okay. I live in Houston. Actually, a little bit outside. I know most people like the warm weather we've been having, but to me I really miss the winter. This year's been so hot. Oh, really cool. Okay, where was I? Yeah, I know, it's horrible. I feel like I always joke that I'm in Australia because it's summer there right now, and it feels like it here. Okay, so yeah, the subscriber is null for some reason. I don't know why that is. Because we know it was registered. Oh, that's cool. It's not able to... It seems like if it couldn't cast it, it would send give a casting error, not just return null. It's not being disposed. Okay, well... Let's take a little break, and maybe when I come back we'll be able to fix this. Sometimes just walking or whatever, change of scenery helps me figure it out when I come back. So yeah, I'll be gone just like 5 minutes. I'm back. Thanks for everybody for sticking around. Let's see if we can squash that bug now. First, I'll turn down the music a bit. Okay. So, yeah, I'll try this for a bit longer, but if it still doesn't work, we'll do some modeling or something. And then I'll try and fix it off string. Okay. So, the problem we have is that for some reason we know it's active. Guess what we could do. Try and get the component here and see if it's what we expect, which is not null since it's supposedly just set. Okay, so now here it has been set to be the messenger. Okay, I'm gonna where's Beluga debug? Here. Okay, so we want to know this because it's really nice to have the frame count. Oh, I did this backwards. Okay, so now we can see, is this all in the same tick? Because that's really weird if it is. Okay, and it is. So something happens between us setting it and then, wait. Oh. Component janitor, 29. Oh no, so it is false there, okay. Actually, it's being called twice. Oh, you know, I think I know what's happening. The activatable list. Did I do this? It must be deactivating it when it adds. Yeah, see, that's what's happening. I don't know if I want that functionality. Well, obviously not, because it's causing problems. But one way we can fix it, and again, this is only because we're not having complicated preloaded scenes and everything. We can go ahead and just activate the activatable list here. Actually, when we do that, we don't even need to use the new inactivate command here, because it should be activated by the list when it's added. So let's see if that's true. Okay, yeah, so now it all works. Of course, something silly. I forgot that I set that in there. Okay, but good. Dimensions are here as we expect. Like, here's the board object, so dimensions 8x8 and graphics ID 1, just like we set. It doesn't show the piece list, I guess, because object is not a valid Unity serializable object. You either have to put the serializable tag above it like we did with board, or it has to descend from a Unity object like mono behavior. But anyway. Okay, so now let's get rid of all those debugs. Let's see if I can find them. Now I'll just test to make sure they cleaned everything up. There we go. Okay. So now what's next? I'm glad we fixed that. I was afraid I'd be there for hours. That's happened before. I guess we can do pieces. Let's clean this up. Now we want the piece class. Let's put it in the right namespace. Okay, so according to our diagram, pieces have an owner, a type, position, is captured, and is king. But in actuality, I think, well, the owner, type, position, and captured would be in here, but I think that the piece behavior actually determines if it's king or not. The only exception would be that if we want, well, no. I was gonna say, because if we want the piece to be able to change if it's a king or not during the game, but I think a more powerful way to do that would actually be to let it change its type during the game, because that way you could do checkers in this same system. It would turn into a super checker or whatever you call it when you get to the other end of the board. I don't know if we'll support that functionality or not, but it would be kind of cool. Okay, so anyway, again, what I think we'll only support 2 players, but just in case, we'll use an integer. We'll use another integer for the type. Why don't we call it prototype to be more descriptive. Okay, I have this, which is in Beluga, which is basically a vector 2, except instead of floats it uses integers. It's just two integers, like an x and y position for the board. And then I guess we'll need a bool for is captured. Oop. One strange thing here is that if the thing is captured, this board position is basically not no longer going to be valid, but I don't think there's any easy way to fix that. And we'll have the piece be another data class like the board, and that it doesn't have any logic itself, really. Yeah, I should make it public, huh? So now we can add this. And now since the piece is serializable, it should show up as a list in the Unity editor. Okay. So that was easy. Actually, let's test that. Let's go back to the board creator and we'll make just a couple pieces. Oops. Oh yeah. Huh? Is it not updated yet? Thought it would auto type piece for me there, but it did object. Okay, so now let's set this owner player to 1. Prototype, we'll just do 1 again. I just want to do something besides the default value, which is 0. And then is captured. Well, the default value is false, so we'll do true here just to. Okay, so now let's see if it shows up. Oh. Oh, that's the problem. Forgot to change the accessors. Okay. Yeah, so maybe we shouldn't do that. Make a placeholder list, because it leads to some problems. Okay, now the board's been created. Oh, that's strange. Well, we know there's 2 pieces, but for some reason it's not showing us them. Oh, because I forgot to put serialize field. Oh yeah, one thing you might notice is in order to have this, you have to, it's a Unity engine. What do they call these? Oh, attribute. Instead of in the default C#. And I'm just gonna, I'm tired of waiting 5 seconds, so I'm gonna set this wait time to 0.5. Oh, yeah, it's done already. I don't know what I was waiting for. Okay, there we go. Oh, that's strange. Oh, again, they're private. I wonder if serialized field works for structures or not. I remember, I don't know, maybe a year ago or so they added the ability to finally serialize your custom structs, and that was like one of my favorite updates that they ever did in Unity. Let's see if it works now. If not, we'll have to make X and Y public, which is kind of annoying, but not a huge deal. Okay, no, it does work. And everything's as we expect. So now what's the next step? Okay, I guess we could make the piece behavior object. Starting to get to the point where we might need to make some of these engine scripts. I don't know. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but no, that's not how you spell it. I noticed that in Unity they spell it with an I-O-U-R. I'm guessing that's a British thing. But then again, I didn't think Unity was British, so I'm not sure why they do that. Okay. So yeah, I'm not sure. We'll need to figure out how we're going to store all this data, but for now, this is almost certainly not going to be how we'll do it, but I'm just going to set an integer for the move type. And we can have, like, for say 1 would be pawn, 2 would be knight, so on. We don't want to do that because we want users to be able to create basically any kind of movement that you could imagine on a chessboard. So it'd probably actually be more like an array, a 2D array of like valid places that you could move on the board. But we'll get to that later. Okay, so then we need the graphical style. And then this is king. Basically says that if this piece is captured, you lose the game, is what it means. And somewhere we'll need to have a list of these behaviors. Maybe instead of prototype we should change this to behavior ID. Probably makes more sense. Maybe we should actually change. Well, no, this is fine still. We just need to have some object that's like a behavior list somewhere. Guess we can go ahead and make it. I'm not sure if this will stay either because, well, we're going to be doing mods using Unity's, what do they call it? Streamable assets? Or not streamable assets, let me see. Asset packages, I think? I can't remember exactly what it's called. But the cool thing about those is that it makes it really easy to load sound and models at runtime, and you can use Unity as the actual editor for the modding tools. Otherwise I'd have to make my own like importer for models and sound, and that's really inefficient. Possible, but I figured everybody would rather see something more interesting. But anyway, let's do, for now I'll just do, I don't know, game database. This is really generic, but and for now I'll just have a list of piece behaviors. No, it's not a list. And again, we'll do an accessor. There's better ways to do this because technically any object could access this and then clear it or whatever, which probably isn't a good idea, but this isn't final, so. We should make piece behavior also serializable. Okay. And really, if anybody has any questions, I don't, feel free to chat to me and talk and ask them. Otherwise, I'll just keep talking. Anyway, so what do we do now? Should we make the board creator have it like set up an actual chess game? I don't know, that seems like it would be a lot of work for something that's just going to be replaced. Because we'll want to have it read stuff from mods. Even if, like, the actual chess game is like a default mod, kind of. Mr. Cryptic, yeah, I haven't been yet to a dev meetup. I wanted to, but I don't know, just haven't found time. I know I really should make time, though. Is there one that you go to? Let's see here. So I don't really want to make the board creator create a specific board yet because that's like I said, getting ahead of myself. Maybe we can work on some of the graphics. That'd probably be good for testing. Oh, those sound interesting. Yeah, I'll have to look into it. That's one of the reasons why I started streaming, actually, was to try and get better at networking. Let's see. Okay, so let's just start up Blender and make a simple little cube that we can use for test pieces. Oh yeah, Mr. Cryptic, I've wanted, like, South by Southwest just happened and I didn't even know. It's kind of out of the loop with that. Also, I mean, not South by Southwest, PAX South. And then of course there's that GDC in Austin, isn't there? I really should go to that one. But anyway, okay, in Blender you want to make sure that you delete these lamps because they kind of, you don't need them in Unity. Okay, delete. Oh, you did? Oh, that's no fun. Yeah, I'm always scared of getting sick at conventions. Sometimes I go to like the... what's that one called? There's like a gaming and kind of like anime convention that comes here every year. We've been to that one a few times. One time I did get really sick afterwards. Seems like it's a rite of passage. Okay, so let's make a model folder. What did I do there? That could have been it. It's been a couple of years now. Okay, so we'll just call this test cube. Oh yeah, save Blender file. And in Blender, like it integrates pretty well with Unity, but like I said, you want to delete the camera and the light. And when you import it into Unity, you'll notice that it kind of rotates the model around, and that's just because they use slightly different coordinate systems. Hey, that didn't work right though. No thank you, Windows. I don't know what it's trying to do now. Oh, I think I accidentally took off the blend extension. Yeah, that's not a good thing. There we go. And then when you bring it in here, you'll see that it's rotated on the x-axis. Just don't worry about it. A better thing to do is actually to parent the model or child the model under another parent so that you don't have to worry about the transform. There we go. So now we need to figure out sorry about that. Piece graphics, as we see here, they're loaded from the game models, which is part of the mods, but this is a test, so I'm probably not going to have it go through that whole pipeline. Basically what we want to happen is I just want the game to spawn the pieces or the models kind of where the pieces should be, just so we can get a test of the current state of the board. Let's make another folder for, what do they call it here? User experience. And then should we call it? Could just call it piece, but because it'll be in a different namespace. But I'll call it this just for clarity. So now we see here the piece. Oh, wrong thing. Here, piece graphics. They need to go into the game logic. So this is actually going to be one of our first instances of an object from one of the groupings going into another grouping. So, but actually we already support this because we have the board as a component, so that's not how you spell board. Okay. So I'm not exactly sure when these would be spawned. So I don't know if it's safe to call to get the board from the component list right in its constructor or not. So I guess that's something we need to try and find out right now. Why is it saying that's bad? Oh, put this in the wrong spot. There we go. So we're going to need some kind of object that will spawn each of these models. That'll listen for when the pieces move, when the board's created. We'll call it the piece model creator. Oh yeah, and these are actually going to be running on Unity objects, so I'll go ahead and make it a mono behavior. And this is going to need the chess game. I'll use that game link script I set up before. And you'll notice that the user experience arrows should all be pointing towards the other two. I don't really want anything to rely on the user experience. I'm trying to think if there's any exceptions. Maybe if you have like, I don't know, a mesh collider, then the collider would depend on the models, and then the engine would need to know. But we're not going to have to deal with that. Where did it do that? Oh, I'm not doing it in the constructor. Oh. You don't want to do, and of course, no constructors and mono behaviors. Again, this start is called basically right before the first update. And I think by then the board should have been created, at least for now, but in the future we probably would want to wait for some event like, well, you know, let's go ahead and do that just to future-proof it. So if we change this, the piece graphics will depend on the piece, but also we'll need to know when the board's created. Sometimes it's helpful for me to keep this little diagram up to date. Sometimes not, but for now I'll try to keep it up to date. Once you start getting a really huge game, it starts to lag behind. And as I said before, if it's just one or two people working on a game, these having a big complicated design diagrams and things aren't as important, because you'll end up just spending a whole lot of time on them that could be spent making the game. So here we want to get the components, and then we'll want to get a board created component, which will be a messenger. Why is it not like this? Oh, I forgot the key. So we actually are going to need to add another key for this. Okay. So again, instead of doing an anonymous function, I'll go ahead and write one here. And actually, there's the problem. Again, we have the cleanup problem. That when this scene is destroyed, this listener will linger. You could use a janitor for these Unity objects, but I found us not quite as well, no, it still would be pretty active, huh? I mean, pretty useful. This model creator will actually have quite a few listeners, so I'll go ahead and make a list here instead of, so we won't have to keep track of them all individually. And I'll definitely start it active so we won't run into that problem again. We should probably just have a way that you can set it right here. Oop, not list. I think it'd be better to do it the other way around, actually. So now we can just say starts active. Want to add the listener janitor, and I'm probably being overly cautious here, but I've had problems with leaked listeners and things, and it's not very easy to fix or to find the bug. Okay, so okay, why is it not like that? Oh, of course. Did I get it backwards? Oh. No, this is right now. Oh, I don't need to put the iSubscribable there. Okay. Now we get back to the fun stuff. Well, actually, let's test this. We don't need this model thing just yet. Okay, so hopefully don't have any more strange bugs and this just works as intended. Oh no. Oh, because we didn't make this messenger yet. So we're gonna need another component janitor this time. But we'll actually need to keep a reference to this messenger because we'll need to send it, send the message out to everybody at some point. Oh yeah, that's correct. Okay. And then now we send okay. Good. I got the debug. Getting a bit too many open files, so oh wow, it's already 12:30. I'll keep going for about 30 more minutes here. Okay, so we'll need to get the board. Trying to think if we should get the board earlier. Well, I guess this is called right when the board's generated, so we're not guaranteed it's up any earlier than this. So we'll need to link, or yeah, we should keep. Yeah, we should definitely keep a dictionary of all the board or the pieces. It might be simpler. Let's see. The pieces won't. They don't have an ID right now. I wonder if we should add that. Because we have two options here. We could either do a dictionary of piece to piece model like this, or if the pieces had like some kind of ID, we could do a dictionary of int to piece model. And I'm not sure what would be better to do here. On the one hand, if you do an integer, you're not having to pass around all these data objects, but it's not as like, if you did, you'd also have to have a list of all the pieces somewhere, which I guess would be in the board. But then you'd have to make sure the board list didn't change. I think for right now we'll just use the object. Because if we ever have to make a piece ID in the future, this won't break and we can update it pretty easily. So for now, we're just going to instantiate some prefab for the pieces. In the future, of course, we'll load these from mods, so we won't really it'll be more complicated, but in fact, I'll just call this test piece prefab. Then we'll make sure this object has the piece model component. What is this song? Not super conducive to programming, but okay, now we want to set the transform. For now, I'll just go 1-to-1. We'll almost for sure want to scale this somehow, but so I think that's about all we need to do for now. So let's set up the prefab. Piece model prefab. And then we'll put this. Oh, it didn't save it. Yeah, sometimes you have to press enter to save names instead of just clicking off of it. Oh yes, we almost forgot. I have a bad habit of, when I'm caching things in dictionaries, to actually set the dictionary, so be sure to do that. So models piece, there we go. It will be important to have this obviously when pieces change positions. Oh, is a piece model not? It's not a mono behavior. Surprised it didn't throw an error before when I tried to get component over here. So this one actually needs the board, but we've kind of abstracted this. Like this should actually be the piece model creator, and then we'd have separate pieces down here, but okay. There we go, now it shows up. And then we drag this right in. Oh yeah, that's not. Actually, we have to make it a prefab first, of course. Try to keep things a little organized. Okay, so now we should get 2 models. If something doesn't work right. Oh. Okay, I forgot to set that up. Okay, so now it works, but like I said, the scale's a little off. Let's increase it. Oh, about 3. That should give some space between them. Okay. So there we go. This is 2-2, and then this is a 3-3. Cool. Now what's next? We only have about 15 minutes left, so I don't want to start something too big. Let's see here. I guess the obvious thing is to make the actual board graphics. I'm just still going to use the test cube and I'll scale it out. Even though there's only going to be 1 board, I'll go ahead and separate it out, just because the creator is actually going to be on that object that we had the piece creator on, and then the board will be on the actual model. That way the model can have special effects if we ever wanted it to. Not sure quite how polished this game will get since it's supposed to only be a prototype, but so this is almost exactly like the piece model creator, so I'm just going to go ahead and copy a lot of it. Okay, I need to fix the imports. We only have 1 model, we actually don't need that. This map, or dictionary, I mean. Oh, I was gonna say that'd be strange that the instantiate didn't show up in here. I'll go ahead and set a field that we can put the board position. I guess we could technically just have that in the prefab. I'm not sure why we'd have to move it. So, yeah, this will be even simpler. I'll go ahead and make the board model script, although it doesn't do anything yet. I wish I would put the namespace in the Unity mono behavior templates. I really need to change it myself. So this basically will do nothing for now, but it's just so we have it. actually don't even need to do this. Okay, so we will need the board in the future, but it's going to complain that we use unused variables, so this is going to be very simple for now. Why does it not like that? Oh. Yeah, I keep saying instantiate's not here, but I have Unity engine right there. I guess I'll rename this. See, it's doing it again. Let's see if it gives an error when I actually go into Unity. Oh, I see. Okay, so what it doesn't like now is that I'm not assigning this to anything. But maybe if I take this away. Nope. See. Well, I know that if I do this, it's going to complain that I have an unused variable. But I just want to instantiate the prefab. Oh, okay. There we go, that was the problem. Forgot to do mono behavior. I don't need all this stuff, so. Okay, so now let's change this to just model creator. Will be very generic here. Dropping some frames, sorry guys. I don't know why. Hopefully it'll stop in a sec. Okay, so all I'm gonna do here is just make another little prefab for the board model. And we're going to be really lazy with it and just scale this. So it should be 8. So the board's 8 by 8, and then we scaled the units by 24. I mean 3, so I'll just do 24 for now. It looks a bit big, but I think my math is right. And then position should be 12. Not something like this. And this isn't final, of course, but okay. So we gotta make the prefab first. Just drag it down here. And there we go. And it even has some fancy shadows. Okay, see there's yeah, obviously the pieces aren't set up totally right, but it's not a big deal for now. There we go. So that brings another obvious thing we need to fix is the camera. Probably it will just be in a fixed position. maybe if we get really fancy and do something like the Harry Potter dragon chess where the pieces like destroy each other, then we'd want to zoom in, but I don't know, like I said, this is basically supposed to be a prototype, so I don't know if we'll get that fancy. Okay, so I want to, just to make it look better, I want to put this as 1 so I can't scale the whole thing up, so I'm just going to do that. There we go. Oh, wrong way. So the camera would really do something. Oh, I did it wrong again. Something like this. Okay, Steph, like I said, it's only supposed to be a prototype, so I don't know. But it's basic. Yeah, I only have 2 minutes left, so I guess we should stop here. I don't know if anybody has any questions or anything they want to say before I go. Thanks everybody for coming out and watching. I really appreciate it. For my first stream, I think it's gone pretty well. We did have a little bit of hiccups with drop frames, so I apologize for that, but I feel like we got a lot done, so hopefully Friday when we come back, I'll have to think about what we'll do next. Maybe we'll do some online stuff. Start up the networking. Well, probably we'll do the turns first, but won't be too far behind. Thanks, Steph. Yeah, I think it is kind of cool. You can mod your own board game. It's gonna be. Well, I plan to make it so that you can set the movement of the pieces any way you want. So anyway, all right. Well, thanks again, everybody. I had a lot of fun, and I'm excited to come back Friday. So hope to see you all there. Bye bye.